Inferno Girl Red streaks across the neon sky of Apex City, her red energy trails leaving a jagged wake against the high-tech skyline. She grits her teeth and urges herself to move faster, the weight of the mission pressing down on her. Back in her command center, Dr. Caro's fingers dance across a glowing keyboard as she monitors the data streams. She tells Cassia that she would have preferred testing this unprecedented communication technology in a controlled setting, but admits the current transmission through the crystal is working well enough for now. Cassia dives toward the city streets, her red scarf billowing behind her, and quips about having to love the convenience of magic. Dr. Adi. Kara warns her that she is nearing the sector where the city's shield is failing, noting that the breach will have likely allowed the darkness to crawl inside. Cassia hovers momentarily as she processes the warning, asking if that means she should expect monsters. When Dr. Carol asks if she thinks she can handle what's coming, Cassia stares down at the city and realizes that for the sake of everyone below, she has to be able to. The hero plunges into the heart of the city, where massive, skeletal monsters with glowing blue ribs are terrorizing the populace. Panic erupts in the plaza as civilians flee the behemoths, and Cassia whispers to herself that this fight is her destiny. A massive explosion of pink and orange energy erupts as Inferno Girl Red strikes one of the creatures, the word boom manifesting in the vibrant colors of the blast. The force of the impact sends shockwaves through the surrounding glass buildings. While dodging through the debris, Cassia asks Dr. Caro over the comms how she would have handled a mess like this back in her day. Dr. Caro retorts that she is currently busy restoring the shields, the only thing protecting hundreds of thousands of lives, so now isn't the time for a history lesson. Suddenly, one of the skeletal monsters lunges forward, its claws making a sharp sound as they graze Cassia's shoulder. She cries out in pain, the impact nearly knocking her out of the air as she struggles to maintain her flight path. Cassia lands in a crouch on the cracked pavement, looking back at the two hulking monsters that have her cornered. She winces at her shoulder and mutters that the creature's attack was nothing more than a cheap shot. Steeling herself, Cassia clenches her fists as a torrent of orange and yellow energy begins to swirl around her body. She lets out a fierce roar, her visor glowing as she prepares to unleash the full extent of her power. The hero stares directly at the nearest beast, her expression hidden behind the gleaming visor as she announces that it is finally the monster's turn to feel the heat. The energy around her hands begins to stabilize into a concentrated orb of light. With all her might, Cassia thrusts her glowing fists forward and screams the name of her ultimate attack, Dragon Blast. A surge of lightning-like energy arcs from her hands toward the towering skeletal dinosaur. A gargantuan dragon made of pure, crystalline energy erupts from Cassia's strike, its jaws wide as it consumes the monster in a blinding wash of light. The sheer power of the blast paints the sky in shades of red and gold. The energy dragon coils upward, soaring high above the buildings and leaving a trail of shimmering fragments in its wake. It stands as a beacon of power against the darkening sky of the failing city sector. High above the rooftops, the dragon detonates in a massive blue explosion that illuminates the entire district. Below, the shadows of survivors can be seen watching the display of force, a sound like a distant thud echoing through the streets. The monster dissolves into smoke. Cassia watches the creature's remains fall, telling herself she only needs to handle one more. Her suit flickers as she tries to find the strength to keep going. The exertion takes its toll instantly, causing Cassia to stumble and clutch her head as blue spirals appear around her visor. Dr. Caro warns her that the Dragon Blast is extremely draining and recommends using it to finish fights rather than starting them. Cassia weakly agrees that the lesson has been learned. A second monster, this one resembling a skeletal bird, screeches with a cry as it dives toward Cassia through the smoke. Winded and unsteady, Cassia looks up and admits she could really use a moment to catch her breath. The bird monster slams into the rooftop with a series of loud cracks, its weight shattering the concrete as Cassia is sent tumbling backward. The debris flies everywhere as the creature prepares for a second pounce. Dr. Caro checks in, reporting that the shield has been stabilized for the moment and asking Cassia if there is anything she needs or if she has a plan. Cassia, still reeling from the impact, confirms that she has a plan in mind. Cassia stands her ground as the massive bird monster towers over her, its blue eyes glowing with malice. She looks up at the creature and simply tells it that it's time to break. With a sudden burst of speed, Cassia lunges forward and grabs the monster's neck, her hands glowing with a faint orange light. She uses the creature's own momentum against it, prepared to end the skirmish here. In a display of raw strength, Cassia swings the monster through the air, the force of her movement creating a sharp crack as they collide with the sturdy branches of a nearby tree. She holds on tight, refusing to let the beast escape her grip. The sequence of the fight unfolds in rapid panels. Cassia launches herself off the monster's back, grabs a thick vine, and uses it to swing herself through the jungle-like canopy of the city's upper levels below her. The monster crashes into the ground with a massive impact. Cassia expertly navigates the branches, her white-gloved hands gripping the vines as she watches the monster fall behind her. She uses the environmental features of the city to her advantage, putting distance between herself and the fallen foe. After the battle, Cassia lands gracefully in Sequoia Plaza, her suit glowing softly as she watches the crowd of onlookers. She whispers to herself that she crushed it, though she notices the crowd seems more stunned than celebratory. An older man named Edward approaches Cassia with a kind smile, telling her not to feel bad because everyone is still struggling with this new reality. Cassia insists that everyone is going to be okay and promises that she is going to stop the monsters. Edward gently encourages her, saying she's doing great. Edward explains that the adrenaline rush of the initial event is fading, and the reality of being trapped without a way back to Earth is starting to eat away at the people. He points to the community gardens, noting the small things like the fact that they will never grow mangoes here are what make the situation feel real. Cassia listens intently before promising Edward that she will find a way to get them all back home. Edward smiles knowingly and says he has no doubt she'll try, then introduces himself to the hero. Cassia points a thumb at herself and proudly states her name, Inferno Girl Red. Edward lets out a small laugh and tells her that he already knows exactly who she is. Cassia walks away across a rooftop. She tells Edward to hang in there, to which he replies that he always does. A final image shows Edward's warm smile as Cassia flies off, her red form disappearing into the distance over the city streets. The scene shifts to a wide shot of the Apex City campus, where futuristic, ivy-covered buildings stand under a glowing hexagonal sky. A red streak from Inferno Girl. Ren's flight is visible in the distance as life continues in the sheltered city. Inside the school library, a young woman with long, messy hair, Cassia in her civilian clothes, is sprinting between the bookshelves. She clutches her bag and a notebook to her chest, her face sweat-streaked as she races against the clock. With a loud bang, Cassia bursts into the hallway and slams her hand against the door of Class B. She is doubled over, gasping for air as she tries to regain her composure before entering the room. Cassia peeks into the classroom, blushing with embarrassment as she apologizes for the noise and for being late. She hugs her notebook tightly, hoping the professor won't be too harsh on her for the interruption. The professor, an older man with stylish white hair, stands before a holographic display of stars and galaxies in a large lecture hall. He tells Cassia that her level of participation is her own business, but continues his lecture about the 6% of reachable galaxies in the observable universe, asking the class how it makes them feel to know millions of stars slip beyond their reach every minute. A student named Lillian raises her hand, admitting that she feels pretty depressed, given their situation trapped and floating alone in the darkness. The professor nods, acknowledging that the scale of loss they are facing is indeed difficult to accept. The professor continues his philosophical speech, reminding the students that even if the universe disappears from view, there are still over 1 trillion stars in their local cluster. He suggests that perhaps their focus shouldn't be on what they don't have. Leaning forward with a small, knowing smile, the professor points his finger toward the class and asks if they should instead focus on what can be found in what they do possess. His eyes gleam with a strange intensity as he finishes his thought. After the lecture, students filter out into the sunny courtyard while Harriet walks alongside Cassia in the library. Cassia looks downcast as she adjusts her bag, while Harriet pulls a book from her bag, looking for something to say. Harriet asks if Cassia is doing okay, and Cassia sighs, mentioning that a student named Thomas wasn't in class again today. Harriet somberly reminds her that his father's funeral is taking place later that day. Cassia pauses, her head hanging low as she realizes the date, noting that it makes sense why he would be absent. Her expression is filled with guilt as she contemplates the loss Thomas is enduring. Harriet stops and looks Cassia in the eye, firmly telling her that what happened wasn't her fault. She points out that both Cassia and Thomas lost a parent that night, but it was solely because of the choices made by Thomas's father, Mr. Park. The two girls share a quiet, emotional moment under the warm glow of the afternoon sun, their friendship offering a brief respite from the weight of their responsibilities. Cassia begins to say something, her voice trailing off. Suddenly, Cassia's eyes go wide with confusion as she looks past Harriet, her mouth hanging open. Harriet notices the change in Cassia's demeanor and lets out a confused, In front of them, a glowing blue holographic arrow has appeared in midair, pointing toward a restricted part of the campus. Harriet whispers that the site is new and asks if they should follow it, noting it feels a bit rude not to. Following the arrow to a set of double doors, they find themselves in a hidden corridor. Cassia looks over her shoulder and admits that while the arrows are extremely over the top, she actually loves the flair of it a lot. They walk deeper into the unknown area. Cassia remarks that she doesn't think she has ever even been to this specific part of the campus. The floor is illuminated by the pulsing blue light of the arrows on the ground. They reach a beautiful indoor garden with a massive waterfall feature, where Lillian is waiting for them. When Harriet asks if Lillian is behind the holographic arrow situation, Lillian points a thumb at herself with a grin and confirms it was her. A collage of images shows the girls reacting to Dr. Caro stepping out from behind the waterfall. Lillian asks if it's a secret waterfall passage, while Harriet apologizes for keeping things from Cassia for the last 2 weeks. Dr. Sarit, Caro invites them in, saying they have Inferno girl business to discuss. Lillian enthusiastically agrees to help, thanking Dr. Caro as Harriet and Cassia watch. Dr. Bull. Caro smiles and tells them they are done with the emotional hang-ups because she has something important to share with the group. A close-up shot shows the shimmering blue curtain of the secret waterfall, acting as a portal into the hidden depths of the school's infrastructure. The light reflects off the water in a mesmerizing pattern. Inside a high-tech, glass-walled elevator, Lillian realizes they must be heading toward the massive energy source she detected under the school while they were searching for the Griffin. She excitedly asks if this is a secret hideout, and Dr. Caro explains that while it wasn't the original intent, she modified the space for their team. A cross-section view shows the elevator plunging deep beneath the city streets, far below the subways and utility tunnels. A bright beam of blue light tracks their descent into the bedrock. Dr. Caro turns to the girls with a theatrical smirk as the elevator slows to a halt. She tells them that if they will permit her a moment of theatricality, she would like to present their new headquarters. The doors open to reveal the Dragon's Lair, a sprawling underground facility built around the roots of a massive tree that holds a glowing green sun at its center. Dr. Caro explains that the green sun is manifested belief, the concentrated determination of the people of Apex City, and it's what powers the failing city shield. The girls stand in awe of the massive power source, while Dr. Caro stands with her hands on her hips, looking proud. Lillian asks if they can take a closer look, and Caro allows it, though she strictly warns them not to touch anything. Dr. Caro's expression becomes serious as she adds a single, ominous word to her warning, yet. She watches the girls closely, her eyes filled with the weight of the secret she still holds, while Harriet and Lillian admire the glowing sphere with wide eyes and clenched fists of excitement. Cassia approaches Dr. Caro. She tells the doctor that there is something specific she has been meaning to ask since the fight with Mr. Park. Caro leads Cassia to a quieter area, noting there is likely a lot she wants to know. Cassia explains that when she was fighting the Griffin, she transformed into a different, more powerful suit, and she wants to understand what happened. Dr. Caro identifies the change as the blazing form and explains that she was only ever able to achieve it a few times herself. She tells Cassia that it requires an intense burst of specific emotions and cannot be turned on at will, making it unreliable in a standard fight. Cassia looks down, disappointed by the news. Dr. Raft. Caro tries to cheer her up by revealing she has good news. She's made great advancements in locating Cassia's mother by re-engineering information from Mr. Park's various computers. Carol raises a finger to explain a minor issue. The device she needs to build requires a rare mineral that was mostly lost in the explosion that killed Mr. Park. However, she notes that a small amount is currently on display at the Apex Natural History Museum, and they simply need to borrow it. Cassia looks concerned and argues that it can't be her steals the mineral, as she is needed as Inferno Girl Red to protect Apex. Doctor! Caro stares back firmly and tells the young lady that they can manage in her absence. In the background, Harriet and Lillian look over a laptop, while Dr. Caro reminds Cassia that she isn't the only one working to protect the city. Cassia sighs, admitting she knows, but her hesitation remains evident. Dr. Caro gestures dismissively, stating that the matter is moot until they actually obtain the mineral. She looks Cassia in the eye and asks if they can at least agree to start there. Cassia clutches her arms, looking stressed, and finally agrees to the plan. She looks down at her bag, the weight of the upcoming heist adding to her already immense burden. The scene shifts to a modern funeral chapel built with large solar panels and surrounded by greenery. A narrator's voice states that losing a great man is never easy, but it feels especially difficult now given the challenges the city is facing. Inside the chapel, a crowd of mourners listens to a eulogy for Sunko Park. The speaker suggests that they shouldn't be haunted by the loss, but inspired by his legacy, as he spent his final hours working in his lab to make the lives of his fellow man better. A close-up shows Thomas Park, looking devastated and angry as he listens to the speaker talk about his father's noble heart and endless generosity. His eyes are cold, and he clearly doesn't share the crowd's sentiment. Thomas pushes through the crowd to lead the service, ignoring the condolences of the other mourners. As he steps out into the hallway, he is intercepted by a woman in a sharp white suit named Miss Sayers, Moretti, who greets him solemnly. Ms. Moretti tells Thomas that she needs to speak with him urgently, her expression grave. Thomas lets out a tired sigh and agrees to follow her into a private office. Inside the room, Thomas tells her that if this is about Park Industries business, he isn't ready to handle it yet. Ms. Moretti turns to him with a briefcase and clarifies that this isn't about business, it's personal. She snaps open the briefcase to reveal a high-tech golden gauntlet set into a foam insert, telling Thomas that this is personal. Thomas stares at the device as small sparkles of light dance around the metallic fingers. Thomas looks up at Ms. Moretti, his face pale as he asks her what exactly the device is. He seems both fascinated and terrified by the power emanating from the briefcase. Ms. Moretti gestures to the gauntlet, calling it an opportunity for revenge that some didn't want him to have. She leans in and tells him that she felt he deserved this chance. Her eyes narrow with a predatory gleam as she tells Thomas that this is his chance for revenge against the woman who killed his father. Her voice is low and manipulative, stoking the fire in Thomas's heart. Thomas is stunned, his jaw dropping as he asks for clarification. He is shocked to hear the claim that someone intentionally killed his father, his grief turning into a dangerous new purpose. Towering over the desk, Thomas slams his hand down as he stares into a mirror, his face twisted with a new dark resolve. He demands to know exactly who was responsible for the death of his father. The scene moves to the exterior of the Apex Natural History Museum at night, a modern building with tiered white levels. The hexagonal shield grid is visible in the sky above the quiet city block. Inside the darkened museum, a security guard talks to Lillian, who is sitting at a table with her laptop. He apologizes and says they are closed, despite the permanent absence of the sun making it hard to tell. Lillian politely agrees to wrap things up. Walking through the exhibits, Lillian talks to Dr. Caro through her earpiece, praising the incredible software, but admitting she is worried about the ethical implications of what they are doing. Back in the lair, Harriet and Dr. Caro monitor Lillian's progress on a large screen. Dr. Caro dismisses Lillian's concerns, arguing that there is no victim because they are only stealing a rock to shave off a tiny fragment before returning it. A close-up shows Lillian's focused face as she works on her laptop. She confirms that the security systems are now offline and wishes Inferno Girl Red Godspeed for the next phase of the plan. High above the museum, Inferno Girl Red drops through an open skylight, confirming over the comms that she is heading in now. She moves with the grace of a trained gymnast as she enters the building. Cassia slides down the glass panels and lands silently in the museum's interior, which is filled with shadows and high-tech displays. She remains alert, her red energy pulsing softly in the dark. Standing before a display case, Cassia remarks to herself that she loves a mission that doesn't involve her getting punched or bitten. She reaches toward the glowing mineral sample, her white gloves ready to grab it. She secures the mineral in her pouch. She continues her thought, hoping for once to avoid being thrown or attacked. Her focus is entirely on the task at hand, unaware of the shadow looming behind her. A mysterious purple eye glows in the darkness, and a voice tells Cassia not to speak too soon. The glass around the figure begins to crack as energy ripples through the air. A figure in massive dark armor with a flowing purple plume steps out of the shadows and points a clawed finger at Cassia. He declares that she is not taking that rock, while Cassia reels back in shock, stammering that it can't be possible. The armored man looms over her, his cape billowing as he accuses Cassia of taking someone away from him and then trying to stop him from getting them back. He growls that he doesn't have time for this interference. He lunges forward with a "cook" sound, his heavy armored hand grabbing Cassia's arm. She grits her teeth and calls him wretched, struggling to break free from his iron-tight grip. The man shouts that she is broken as he prepares another strike. Cassia's visor reflects the energy of his gauntlet, as she realizes this is going to be a much more difficult fight than she anticipated. With a massive crack, an explosion of yellow and blue energy erupts between them as they clash. The word "irredeemable" is shouted into the air as the museum exhibit around them begins to shatter. Cassia stands in a combat stance, telling the man that while she doesn't know how he's back, she has beaten him once and will gladly do it again. The armored man stares her down, unmoved by her threat. The battle rages through the museum in a series of kinetic action shots. They exchange blows while glass shards fly everywhere. Harriet's voice comes through the comms, pleading with Cassia not to let him trash the museum because they can't afford any more blows to the public spirit. Cassia glares through her visor, her eye visible and filled with determination. She tells Harriet that she hears her, her voice tight with the effort of the struggle. Back in the lair, Harriet looks worriedly at the monitor, telling Cassia that they really can't let the museum be destroyed. Dr. Tend. Caro stands beside her, watching the feed with a stoic, unreadable expression. The armored man unleashes a massive spear of blue energy with a vin-voom sound, declaring that they are done here. Cassia is caught in the expanding blast, her arms raised to protect her face. With a violent crash, the armored man slams Cassia through a window, and she is sent flying into the hallway. The sheer force of his armor is overwhelming, and Cassia struggles to find a counterattack. Cassia picks herself up from the floor, her suit glowing with intense yellow light as she screams, "Dragon Blast!" She points her fists at her opponent, who was hunched over, his cape smoking from the previous exchange. A smaller, more concentrated energy dragon erupts from Cassia's strike, snaking through the museum hallway toward the armored figure. The creature's jaws are translucent and filled with jagged energy teeth. The man lets out a desperate "no" as the dragon consumes him with a whoosh of fire and light. The intense heat of the blast melts the surrounding displays as the man is engulfed in the hero's power. The man crosses his armored arms in a last-ditch effort to shield himself from the explosion. The energy ripples around him with a room sound, throwing shards of stone and metal into the air. When the smoke begins to clear, the armored man is seen lying face down on the debris-strewn floor, completely motionless. Cassia stands in the foreground, her fists still clenched, but her energy starting to fade. In a frantic sequence, Cassia rushes to the fallen man's side, her visor retracting to reveal her tear-streaked face. She screams his name, Thomas, and realizes with horror that the man under the armor was the classmate she had been worried about. Harriet yells through the comms for Cassia to check his pulse, her voice frantic. Cassia's hands tremble as she reaches for his neck, her voice breaking as she whispers that she doesn't know what to do. A moment later, Cassia lets out a sob of relief and thanks God, announcing that he's alive and breathing. She cradles Thomas's head in her lap, her eyes filled with tears as she realizes how close she came to killing him. In a panel showing a romantic couple walking near the museum, Lillian sits on a nearby bench with her laptop. She tells the team that security is headed toward the Minerals and Gems Hall because the fight made too much noise. Dr. Caro tells Cassia that they can't have people know Inferno Girl Red was involved in trashing a museum. She insists that they need the city to believe in her for their own safety and orders Cassia to get out of there immediately. Cassia looks down at Thomas, who is still unconscious on the floor among the broken glass. She whispers his name one last time, her heart heavy with the secret she now shares with him. A close-up of Cassia's face shows her absolute devastation, her eyes wide with shock and guilt. She is paralyzed by the realization of what she has done to her friend. Breaking through the roof, a beam of light signals Cassia's departure as the city's hexagonal shield pulses overhead. She leaves the museum behind, but the consequences of the night are only just beginning. In a luxury apartment with high arches, Sylvia and Silvio Moretti, the twins, stand on a balcony. Sylvia holds her phone and tells her mother that they have a problem because they've lost contact with Thomas. Silvio notes that they should have given the gauntlet to their mother instead. Ms. Moretti sits at a desk covered in papers, explaining that Thomas's father locked the gauntlet to his genetic line, making Thomas the only person able to use it. She calmly reviews the files, her demeanor cold and calculating. She looks up with a sinister smirk, calling the plan a harmless gamble that she didn't expect to pay off anyway. She dismisses the late Sung-ho's scientific methods, noting that he is now in the ground. Leaning in closer, her face illuminated by a harsh light, she suggests that they do things their way. Her eyes are filled with a chilling ambition as she plots their next move. The twins stand together in a spotlight, looking confident and villainous. Sylvia declares with a grin that it's time to play the people, signaling the start of a new, public campaign of terror. At the school gym, Cassia is training intensely on a rock-climbing wall, her face set in a grim expression. Harriet walks across the gym floor far below, approaching the wall to talk to her friend. Harriet yells up that Lillian and Dr. Caro are working on the mineral and will soon be able to integrate it into Cassia's bracelet. Cassia ignores the update, her focus entirely on her climb as she pulls herself upward with white-knuckled intensity. Cassia reaches the top of the wall, sweat dripping from her face as she looks down with an expression of pure rage and self-loathing. Her bracelet glows faintly as she clings to the handholds. Harriet sighs and tells Cassia that she wishes there was something she could say to convince her that what happened to Thomas wasn't her fault. Cassia drops from the wall, landing in a crouch as a shock wave of energy ripples out from her. Cassia stands up, her head bowed as she tells Harriet that maybe it's hard to believe it wasn't her fault, because it absolutely was. Her voice is full of pain as she clutches the back of her neck. Cassia snaps, yelling at Harriet that she blasted him and that the situation isn't ambiguous at all. Her face is flushed with anger, her long hair flying as she vents her frustration. Cassia begins punching a heavy bag with enough force to create orange sparks of energy. Harriet argues that Thomas was trying to hurt her, but Cassia shouts back that it was only because she killed his dad. Harriet steps closer, explaining that Sung-ho died because his own unstable technology exploded while he was trying to kill Cassia's mother and destroy the city. She tells Cassia that she is punishing herself with a narrative she doesn't deserve. Cassia cries out that she has to be better and that she almost murdered Thomas. Harriet walks up and places a hand on her shoulder, telling her not to spiral and promising that they will work through the mess together. A massive screen in the city shows a live broadcast from the twins, with over 100,000 viewers watching. Sylvia and Silvio introduce themselves, telling the people that their city is in the grip of a being older than the universe, and that they will all absolutely die unless they pledge themselves to their master. In the gym, Cassia and Harriet watch the broadcast with looks of sheer horror. The twins tell the city that in 2 days' time, they are going to destroy a beloved place so that people can learn what it feels like to face inevitable cataclysm. In the lair, Dr. Caro displays holographic dossiers of Sylvia and Sylvia Moretti on the wall. She explains to the team that the two were students at Helix campus but haven't attended since the city was taken into the darkness. Lillian, sitting at the table, asks if anyone working for Helix noticed that they were missing. She looks concerned, her hands clasped as she considers the implications of the students' disappearance. Dr. Caro admits that they did notice, stating there were 15 students unaccounted for after the Disaster 13 now. She says they hope the students were simply out of the city at the time. But now it's clear they are aligned with the enemy. Caro explains that since the twins were able to hack the city's network, they have to assume they can follow through on their threats. She says they have less than 48 hours to figure out the target and protect it. Harriet, looking somber through her glasses, notes that they are going to need Inferno Girl Red to speak to the people after this. She says the city is going to need a heavy-duty pick-me-up after such a terrifying broadcast. Lillian looks at a data readout and notes that the city's shield is not in great shape. She says that whatever they can do to help, they should be doing it immediately. Cassia suddenly stands up and says she has to get to class, her face set in a tired but determined expression. She adjusts her backpack, looking for an excuse to step away from the stress of the lair. Dr. Carroll looks at Cassia with a mixture of concern and sternness, saying she doesn't want to make a habit of it, but she can smooth over any attendance concerns this one time. Cassia raises a hand to stop Caro, telling the teen that she knows how much is on the line, but she just needs a single minute of normalcy. Her eyes are filled with a desperate plea for a break from her hero life. Dr. Caro's expression softens as she acknowledges that things have been relentless since Cassia's mother was taken. She tells Cassia to go to class and forget about everything as best she can while the rest of them keep working. Cassia walks away toward the exit, thanking them all and promising to be right back. Lillian and Harriet watch her go, the tension in the room remaining thick even after she leaves. Under the bright artificial sunlight of the campus, Cassia walks toward a bike rack. She is shocked to see Thomas there, wearing a blue hoodie and walking his bike. She calls out his name in a voice filled with concern. Thomas stops and looks over his shoulder, greeting Cassie with a small smile. She rushes toward him and asks if he's okay, noting that he looks hurt due to the bandage on his cheek and the bruises on his face. Thomas gives her a sheepish look and lies, claiming he fell down some stairs because he's clumsy. He tells her he's doing okay, and Cassia softly replies that she's glad to hear it. They walk together through the crowd of students. Cassia admits she's surprised he's coming to class at all, after everything that's happened to him. Thomas shrugs and admits he doesn't know why, he just really needed a moment of normalcy. Cassia looks at him with a warm, understanding smile and tells him that she absolutely understands that feeling. Thomas winces as he rubs his neck, admitting that he might not have picked the best class to attend today. He jokes that he doesn't think he's really in hands-on agriculture shape right now. Cassia gives him a playful, encouraging grin and offers to be his partner for the class so she can do the heavy lifting. Thomas smiles brightly at her and says he would really appreciate that. The two walk into a large, glass-roofed greenhouse filled with potted plants and garden beds. They join the other students, their brief moment of civilian life providing them both with a temporary peace. Later, Cassia returns to the lair and asks where she can help. Lillian waves her over, excitedly announcing that they are all set to shoot her video message and broadcast it across the entire city. Cassia looks nervous, asking what she is supposed to say as a camera setup is prepared. Lillian tells her to say something reassuring and decides they should just start rolling to see how it goes. Lillian points a finger at Cassia and realized she has to change into her suit first. Her expression is energetic, contrasting with Cassia's hesitant posture. Cassia looks down at her civilian clothes and asks if they are really that bad of a look. Her reflection in the phone screen shows a tired young woman who just wants to stay as Cassia for a little longer. Lillian lets out a small laugh and Cassia quickly apologizes, realizing that the city needs to see the hero, not the student. She puts on a brave face, ready to transform. Cassia strikes a pose and shouts, "Inferno Ignite," as ribbons of orange energy swirl around her. Her eyes are closed in concentration as the power of the crystal takes over her form. The panel shows 3 frames from the live broadcast where Inferno Girl Red gives a thumbs up. She awkwardly introduces herself, reminding people she's the one fighting monsters, and tells them not to worry because she has a team and they are going to protect the city. In the next frame, Cassia gives a double peace sign and tells everyone to stay calm, don't stress, and be chill. She pauses, realizing those are all the same thing, before continuing her message. She clenches her fist and tells the people to take care of each other and to stay. A close-up of the video timer shows 2 minutes and 12 seconds have passed on the live feed. The red live indicator glows at the top of the frame. Good. Cassia makes a finger gun gesture at the camera, her visor reflecting a bright light as she finishes her awkward but earnest sign-off. Lillian's voice comes from off-camera, announcing that they are finally off the air. The broadcast ends, leaving Cassia standing in the spotlight, hoping her words were enough. Lillian looks at her tablet and repeats, "Stay good," with a look of disbelief. Cassia ignores the critique and asks if there's any improvement in the shield's strength, to which Lillian admits it's only a little better. Dr. Caro approaches Cassia and reassures her that they can give her some public speaking training, calling it an easy fix. Cassia looks down, clearly feeling embarrassed by her performance. Caro leads Cassia away, telling her she owes her some actual combat training. Cassia asks if they shouldn't be focused on Silvio and Silvio, but Caro insists that Cassia needs to be in peak form, and she is prepared for this. They enter a large training room filled with blue, translucent hard light projections of knights and monsters. Cassia is amazed as Caro explains that these projections shouldn't hurt her too badly but will provide a useful challenge. Dr. Caro explains that the crystal Cassia uses to transform has a history that stretches back long before her. She tells Cassia how she once used it to focus and amplify the power of the dragon within. A close-up shows the glowing red crystal in Cassia's bracelet as Caro explains that it has traveled across existence for eons, seeking out warriors who can push back against entropy. The gem pulses with an inner fire. Caro instructs Cassia to reach into the crystal and pull from the glimmers of its past, just as she did when she first learned to transform. She tells Cassia to clear her mind and connect with the predecessors who came before them. Cassia's visor glows with a fierce red light as she prepares to show the holographic opponents exactly what Inferno Girl Red is capable of. She looks ready to take on the weight of the past. A full-page montage shows Cassia training against the hard light shadows of previous Inferno Girls. They clash with swords and energy blasts, and a voice reminds her that these warriors have always been there, and she is never truly alone. A parallel montage shows Thomas training alone in a dark room with his new gauntlet. He is surrounded by green sound effects as he shouts and punches holographic targets, his eyes filled with a desperate, vengeful fury. Cassia sits on a windowsill, looking at her phone at a message thread with Thomas. She told him she promised not to bail this time, but he replied that he has a thing tonight. She sighs and types "all good" while looking out at her reflection in the glass. Lillian and Harriet walk into the room, Harriet carrying a bag and telling Cassia they will go over the plan tomorrow. She insists that Cassia has too much weight on her shoulders and needs some R&R tonight. Cassia starts to argue, but Harriet silences her, claiming it's Dr. Caro's orders. Lillian adds that her prescription for the night is a tradition from Harriet movie night. Lillian spreads her arms wide, surrounded by pillows and popcorn, and excitedly welcomes Cassia to movie night. Cassia finally gives in with a small smile, agreeing to the plan. The three girls lie on the floor together, surrounded by snacks and blankets. They look relaxed and happy as they share a rare moment of peace, their bond strengthening in the quiet of the room. The next day, Cassia and Lillian stand on the bleachers of the school sports field. Lillian explains that they've been tracking goods around the city but haven't found any evidence of a bomb as the intended target. In the background, students are running through an obstacle course on the red track. Lillian explains that they couldn't find anything significant being moved, which makes the situation even more unpredictable. Cassia looks disappointed, calling it bad news. Lillian agrees it's not great and says they simply have to be prepared for pretty much anything and everything the twins might throw at them. Lillian points toward the city's energy source and tells Cassia she had an idea while staring at it. She explains they could use a shield to contain whatever the twins plan on blowing up. Lillian pulls out a small circular device, explaining that she created it with Dr. Caro's help. She says it unfurls into a net that Cassia can channel her Dragon Blast energy through to contain an explosion. Lillian strikes a proud pose, calling it a whole new field of science that she's helping to pioneer. Cassia jokes that she thought it was magic, and Lillian laughs, saying she's learning the science of magic. Cassia looks at the device in her hand, asking if it will really be able to contain whatever it needs to. Lillian looks a bit unsure, saying she hopes so, as long as Cassia believes in herself. Cassia puts the device in her pocket and tells Lillian it's fine, declaring that she's got this. She looks out over the field, her expression hardening as she prepares for the confrontation. Inferno Girl Red flies over the city while communicating with Harriet and Dr. Caro, who are monitoring social media and city systems. Harriet reports that there is no sign of interference. but Cassia admits she's starting to get worried. Suddenly, with a loud thwomp, the armored man from the museum tackles Cassia from behind. They crash onto a rooftop, the impact creating a massive cloud of dust as they skid across the concrete. The armored man stands up and points at Cassia, shouting that he has looked everywhere for her. Cassia, still recovering from the fall, tells him that she really can't do this right now and offers an apology. Thomas lunges again, shouting that the situation isn't up to her. Cassia dodges his strike, pleading with him to stop because they don't have time for this fight. He swings a massive, glowing fist at her, and Cassia raises her arms to block the impact. Her suit's energy ripples as she groans under the force of his attack. During the struggle, Cassia's helmet retracts or is damaged, and she looks up at him with a sad, recognition-filled expression. Thomas freezes in place, his voice a whisper as he says, "Cassia." Thomas stands over her, his armor still crackling with purple energy, but his posture has completely changed. He stares down at his classmate, the truth of their situation finally sinking in. A series of panels show Cassia apologizing to Thomas for what happened to his father, stating she never meant for him to die. She tells him she understands why he wants revenge, and even suggests that maybe he deserves to get it. A close-up of Cassia's eyes shows her deep sorrow as she speaks to Thomas. She looks vulnerable and honest, her guard completely down as she tries to reach him through his anger. Thomas looks away, his hand to his face as he tells Cassia that he barely knows her. He explains that after his dad died, he went through his things and learned about the cult, admitting that his father was a monster. Thomas explains that he found the schematics for his father's transporter technology and used the gauntlet given to him by the cult to power it. He tells Cassia he took the mineral because he wanted to use the technology to get out of the doomed city. Thomas suggests that Cassia could get out of the city too, since she's likely the only one who can. Cassia refuses, stating she has to save the city because it's her destiny. Thomas scoffs at the word destiny, asking if she's serious. Cassia looks down, explaining that she has to believe she's destined to do this because it's what makes the magic work and prevents it from being just dumb luck. Her expression is one of quiet determination. Thomas watches her, his expression darkening with a mixture of anger and disappointment. He seems to realize that their paths are fundamentally different. Dr. Caro interrupts over the comms, reporting a monster sighting. Cassia tells Thomas she has to go, but she promises to bring him a mineral sample if he meets her back here in 2 hours. Thomas stares at her before finally saying he trusts her. Thomas watches Cassia fly away. His armored hand crackles with power. He stands alone on the rooftop, his silhouette framed against the glowing shield of the city. A giant skeletal monster resembling a dinosaur appears near a park with a Ferris wheel. A young woman inside a Ferris wheel pod watches in horror as the creature lets out a massive roar below. Inferno Girl Red arrives on the scene, shouting for people to keep their heads down. She fires several energy blasts at the creature with a tsu sound as civilians scramble to safety. A massive thuma echoes through the park as one of Cassia's blasts hits the ground near a fleeing couple. The explosion creates a huge cloud of orange fire, further terrifying the people nearby. Cassia lands and looks back at the fire, thinking to herself that it was just a monster, and she was expecting something more. She seems overconfident as she watches the smoke clear. Suddenly, she shouts, "Watch out," as the monster erupts in orange flames and lets out another roar. The creature looks more powerful than before, its skeletal frame wreathed in fire. The monster lunges and strikes Cassia with a thunk, sending her flying through the air. In a side panel, her fist is shown hitting the monster with a crack, but the creature seems unfazed by the counterattack. Cassia stands in front of a group of fleeing civilians, holding back the beast with her energy-reinforced arm. She yells for them to run while she holds the creature back, her suit glowing brightly. A young woman with a white cap and a black face mask stands among the crowd, looking over her shoulder at the fight. She has a calm, calculating look in her eyes as she watches Inferno Girl Red struggle. Cassia glares at the masked woman, recognizing her. The woman simply says, "Hey," as she flips backward through the air with effortless grace, telling Cassia she doesn't like it when people get handsy. The woman stands beside the skeletal monster and pulls a vial of purple liquid from her belt with a k sound. She tells Cassia there are plenty of other ways to have fun, As she prepares to use the substance on the creature, the masked woman injects the monster, causing it to crackle with blue energy and turn into a bubbling mass of purple sludge. She taunts Cassia, saying she's about to have more urgent problems as the monster begins to swell. Cassia watches in horror from a distance as Harriet reports that people are still trapped on the Ferris wheel. The monster lets out a growl as it starts to mutate uncontrollably. Harriet yells through the comms that Cassia is going to need to contain the explosion, and Cassia desperately agrees as she prepares her new gear. Lillian shouts, "Now!" and Cassia pulls out the containment device, her suit glowing with intense power. She lunges toward the center of the mutating beast, her movements blurred by speed. With a sheeing sound, the device unfurls into a glowing net that wraps around the center of the monster. Cassia lands on the ground, holding the energy tether and shouting, "Here we go!" The net glows with bright blue light, vibrating with a loud sound as it struggles to hold back the monster's energy. "Doctor?" Caro's voice commands Cassia to focus and channel everything she is through the device. A massive room echoes as the containment field expands, creating a shockwave that distorts the air around the monster. The energy net pulses with vibrant colors as it reaches its breaking point. Cassia's muscles bulge as she pulls on the energy tether, her voice a scream of "Argar." Lillian urges her to focus, but Cassia shouts back that she doesn't think she can hold the containment any longer. Suddenly, a bolt of purple energy with a sound hits the Ferris wheel support beam. Cassia screams "No" as a metal ting echoes and the structure begins to fail while the containment field continues to pulse. One of the Ferris wheel pods breaks loose and falls toward the ground, the passengers inside letting out an "ah" as they plummet. Cassia watches in terror, realizing the lives of the civilians are in immediate danger. The hero lets out a desperate "no" as she realizes she has to choose between maintaining the containment and saving the falling pod. The panel is filled with intense red light reflecting her internal panic. Cassia lets go of the containment tether and dives after the falling pod, her red energy trails following her through the air. Behind her, the monster continues to bubble and glow with unstable energy. In a display of incredible strength, Cassia catches the massive metal pod in midair, letting out a strained garge as the weight nearly crushes her. She uses her energy to slow their descent toward the park floor. Cassia gently lowers the pod onto the grass, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She tells the people inside to take it easy as she sets them down, her energy flickering after the intense effort. A young man rushes out of the pod and over to his father, who is lying unconscious on the ground. He shouts that his dad hit his head, while Cassia watches from the background, her expression filled with worry. A woman kneels beside the man, telling the boy that his father is breathing and his pulse is steady. Cassia approaches and softly says she's so sorry for what happened. The young man looks up at Cassia with a grateful smile, telling her not to apologize because he's alive and they're all alive because she saved them. In the background, other survivors are calling for ambulances and thanking the hero. Thomas, still in his civilian clothes, watches from the edge of the crowd as Cassia is thanked by the survivors. He has a complicated look on his face as he sees the people hail her as a savior. Back at the lair, Cassia walks through the doors, looking exhausted. Harriet tells her they saw what happened, and she's sorry the net failed. But Cassia ignores her and asks for a moment alone with Dr. Caro. Harriet and Lillian walk away, leaving Cassia and Dr. Caro alone in the vast room. Cassia stands with her arms crossed, the tension between them palpable as they stare each other down. Cassia explodes with frustration, asking what she is doing wrong. Dr. Caro remains calm, sitting on a bench, and quietly tells Cassia that she isn't doing anything wrong. Cassia yells that the net failed and that it was supposed to be powered by her belief. She reminds Caro that she told her all she had to do was believe, her face twisted with a mixture of anger and desperation. Dr. Caro looks up at her with a cold, piercing gaze and tells Cassia that she has never said that. She explains the belief empowers her, but doesn't make her infallible, and tells Cassia that she is not a god. Cassia argues back, saying she needs to be able to fulfill her destiny. Dr. Caro stands up and walks toward her, asking Cassia what exactly she means by destiny. Cassia sits on the edge of a bed, looking up at the ceiling as she says, "Well, I was chosen." Her voice is small, revealing how much she relies on the idea of being special. Dr. Caro stares at her with an expression of blunt honesty and tells Cassia the hard truth. No, you weren't. The words hang in the air, shattering Cassia's worldview in a single moment. Cassia looks up in disbelief, arguing that she won the lottery to get into the school, and the bracelet came right to her. She is desperate to hold on to the idea that her powers were meant for her. Dr. Caro sighs and reveals that she rigged the lottery because Cassia's mother had sacrificed so much for her. She admits she saw it as a chance to make it up to her mother and tells Cassia she's sorry she didn't tell her sooner. Caro continues the reveal, stating that the bracelet was actually coming for her, not Cassia. She explains that her private office is in the library tower, and the artifact simply found Cassia on its way to her. Cassia sits with her arms crossed, looking bitter and hurt. She tells Dr. Caro that maybe she should just take the bracelet back then. Dr. Caro tells Cassia she doesn't want that, and even if she did, she can't use it anymore. She gives a sad, wistful smile as she explains the limits of the crystal's power. Caro reveals the heavy dark scars on her arm, explaining that a person can only have their belief amplified for so long before it burns out their system. She tells Cassia that she used the bracelet more than she should have, and if she tries again, it might kill her. Cassia looks at Caro's arm with a mix of horror and sympathy. Caro smiles gently, telling Cassia that she won't let that happen to her, reaffirming her role as a protective mentor. The conversation is interrupted as Lillian runs into the room, apologizing as she reports another monster sighting by the memorial. Cassia stands up immediately, her face full of conflict as she realizes she has to go back out there despite everything. High above the memorial, Inferno Girl Red watches as Sylvia and a monster prepare to attack. She suggests to the team that maybe it wouldn't be so bad if they took out a statue so she could catch Sylvia and find out what she knows. Back in the lair, Lillian argues that they can't risk a symbolic victory for the cult and can't afford any perceived failures right now. Cassia admits it's a fair point as she watches Sylvia begin to escape. Cassia tries to deploy the containment net again with a shying and Vern sound, but she is suddenly interrupted. An armored figure lunges at her, screaming that she lied to him. The armored Thomas fires several Vin Vroom energy blasts at Cassia, who dodges with an arg. He tells her she's just like the others, treating everyone like a pawn in her war, while Cassia desperately tries to apologize and explain. A massive purple beam of energy from the monster's mouth with a boom sound blasts both Cassia and Thomas. They are sent flying with a series of loud crack sounds, breaking through the city's hexagonal shield and out into the terrifying void of space. Cassia walks down a long dirt path toward a two-story house, the setting sun creating a blinding glare through the trees overhead. She steps inside the hallway, looking around at the framed pictures and hanging coats while calling out a hesitant hello. In the kitchen, an old man with white hair and an apron is busy dicing carrots, turning his head to offer a warm greeting as Cassia stands in the doorway. Cassia rubs the back of her neck nervously and admits that she thinks she has gotten lost. The old man smiles kindly, telling her that she is quite welcome regardless, and inviting her to take a seat while he prepares some tea. Exhausted, Cassia leans against the counter, thanking him and whispering that she feels incredibly tired. The man pours dark tea into a green cup. Cassia stares off, confessing that she has no idea how she even arrived at this place. He carries a tray with 2 steaming cups and a sugar bowl, suggesting that perhaps her arrival was simply something she couldn't help. The man sits across from her at the sunlit table, calmly proposing that maybe this house is just the place where all paths eventually lead. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit workshop filled with wires and metal pipes, Harriet walks toward Lillian, who is busy welding a piece of machinery. Lillian doesn't look up, stating it isn't a good time because she has to save Cassia, but she agrees when Harriet asks if they can talk while she works. Harriet pulls her goggles up onto her forehead, her eyes filled with concern as she tells Lillian that losing Cassia wasn't her fault. Lillian slams her fist against the workbench, her back to Harriet as she shouts that she knows it was absolutely her fault. Lillian gestures wildly, explaining she got carried away by the new world of engineering and assumed she could handle it, even though the net was never meant to contain such a load. Harriet steps closer and places a comforting hand on Lillian's shoulder, insisting that so many people would have died if those blasts hadn't been partially contained. Lillian looks down as she thanks Harriet, who tells her she wishes Lillian knew how good she is at talking people through their problems. Harriet looks away with a bittersweet expression, remarking that she's glad she's good for something because she often feels like she doesn't know how to support Cassia. The two women stand in silhouette amidst the cluttered workshop as Harriet trails off, lamenting her uncertainty. In a high-tech facility marked with signs for levels B2 and A1, a young man yells at a woman in a lab coat, asking if she's angry at them for being disadvantaged against the Inferno girl. The woman looks at her clipboard and calmly replies that she's doing something about their disadvantage by approximating the Griffin's creation process. The two siblings walk toward a glowing platform. The young man asks his sister if she thinks their mother would actually risk hurting them. They step up onto the metallic surface, bathed in a harsh blue light as the experiment begins. Their mother gives the order for Dr. Dungler to proceed, and as a button is pressed, the two siblings scream in agony while purple electricity surges through their bodies. In a modern, dimly lit living room, Thomas sits on the edge of a sofa with his head in his hands until a doorbell chimes, startling him. A holographic notification informs him of a visitor request from Dr. Janine Caro, and after a long moment of staring, Thomas quietly tells the system to let her in. Dr. Caro enters the room holding a small metallic box, asking Thomas how he is doing and hoping that she isn't bothering him. Thomas doesn't look up at her, remaining hunched over and silent as the weight of his thoughts settles over the room. The doctor sits down and places the box on the coffee table, telling him it's okay if he doesn't want to talk and that she just wanted to bring him something. Thomas looks at the glowing mineral sample inside the open box and realizes she is working with Cassia, but his voice turns bitter. He looks Dr. Caro in the eye with a haunted expression, telling her she wouldn't be doing any of this if she knew that he was the one who killed Cassia. Dr. Caro firmly tells him he didn't kill her, explaining that they have footage of the monster explosion blasting Cassia through the shield and out of the city. She leans in with a gentle look, reminding Thomas that, despite everything, he is still her student and she is supposed to try to take care of him. Thomas picks up the vial containing the glowing amber stone, questioning if she is giving it to him so he can leave, while she notes that Cassia needs his help. He stares intensely at the crystal, stating that staying here is throwing his life away. But Dr. Carroll asks what leaving is exactly, to which he replies, surviving. The doctor looks at him with a mixture of sadness and sternness, her eyes narrowing as she prepares to challenge his logic. Thomas scoffs and turns his head away, clearly unmoved by the emotional appeal as he remains fixed on his own survival. Dr. Carroll reaches out toward the table, asking Thomas to try to hear her not as a teacher, but as a person who has lived through what he is feeling. She closes her eyes tightly, admitting with a heavy voice that she is a person who has made a great many mistakes in her life. She reveals her secret, telling him she used to be Inferno Girl Red years ago and that she pushed everyone away to protect them, which only ended up hurting everyone, including herself. She stands up to leave, telling Thomas that people do care about him even if his father didn't, and warns him that believing everyone is like his father is a dangerous path. Thomas is left alone in the dark room, staring down at the glowing box on the table, as her final warning about becoming like his father echoes in the air. Back in the mysterious house, Cassia sits at the table and tells the old man that he has a beautiful home. The man beams with an unsettlingly wide smile, saying it's important that people feel relaxed because everyone ends up here in the end. Cassia laughs awkwardly and raises a hand, joking that he makes it sound like this place is heaven or some kind of afterlife. The man chuckles softly, leaning forward to tell her that she isn't dead, addressing her specifically as Inferno Girl Red. Expression turns cold and sharp as he warns her that while her suit is protecting her for now, its power will not last forever. Cassie's eyes widen under her visor and she points a finger at him, suddenly realizing that she recognizes who he is. The man smirks, recalling their nice conversation earlier at the park with a chillingly pleasant demeanor. Cassia asks how he got here, and the man explains that the city's shield was weak for a moment, giving him the chance to poke his head in and see how things were going. Cassia's form begins to glitch and fade like static as she trembles, realizing the true nature of the man standing before her. The man stands and bows theatrically amidst a swirling vortex of black and white lines, confirming that she has finally figured it out. He gestures to the darkening void around them, admitting the house is just a front to lure people in, though he claims it is real in spirit. He floats in the starry darkness with his arms outstretched, describing himself as calm, peaceful, and inviting. Cassia glares through the glitching visor of her helmet, asking him how he can call himself peaceful given all the destruction he is responsible for. The man points a finger upward, retorting that her resistance is the cause of the destruction, or more accurately, her very existence is the original sin. He dismisses humanity as nothing but noise, chaos, and pain, claiming that everything was perfectly peaceful before they arrived and will be again once they are gone. Cassia crosses her arms, noting that he talks as if his victory is inevitable, yet he is fighting awfully hard to achieve it. The man's face is suddenly shadowed by a dark swirling aura as he asks why she thinks she'll be the exception to a universal rule. Cassia begins to glow with bright blue energy, stating that she understands now that she isn't the exception, causing the man to look confused as he begins to dissolve into light. Cassia's armored form floats in the vast empty darkness of space, drifting aimlessly far from the world below. Suddenly, Lillian appears, wearing a sleek new armored suit and reaching out her hand toward Cassia as she flies through the void. Lillian smiles warmly through her visor, telling Cassia that she has her, while Cassia whispers Lillian's name in shock. Lillian grabs Cassia and fires a tether of yellow energy toward the glowing green grid of the city's shield, telling her friend it's time to go home. The two girls sit on the grass in a park, Cassia in her civilian clothes, and Lillian showing off a device, with Cassia expressing amazement at the speed of the suit's construction. Lillian explains with a modest grin that the suit is really just an adaptation of the net she was already working on. Her expression softens into guilt as she confesses that the net failing was her fault because a single energy source was never going to be enough. Lillian holds up a small glowing disc, telling Cassia that she has fixed the problem now and apologizing for her earlier oversight. Cassia smiles brightly and tells Lillian not to apologize, insisting that she has done incredible things in a very short time. Lillian lets out a long sigh, her eyes downcast as she struggles to accept the praise despite her lingering self-doubt. Cassia points a finger at Lillian and declares that it doesn't matter because Lillian saved her life, meaning she never has to apologize for anything ever again. Lillian finally laughs and agrees to the deal, but their moment of peace is interrupted by Harriet calling over a screen to report sightings of new, different monsters. Harriet tells Lillian to do her thing as a communicator, and after a brief nod to Cassia, Cassia shouts, "Inferno ignite," and blasts into the sky in a trail of red flames. In the middle of the city, panicked civilians run through the streets as a massive explosion of smoke and debris erupts behind them. Inferno Girl Red lands in front of the destruction and demands to know where the monsters are, only to find the two siblings from the lab standing there. She recognizes them immediately, standing in a defensive posture as the two teens look at her with eerie, glowing eyes. The sister grins maliciously, asking Cassia if she hasn't heard the news yet, as her veins begin to glow with a dark purple light. The siblings transform into horrific beasts known as the Chimera Twins, sprouting tentacles and massive claws amidst a swirl of dark energy. Cassia charges forward at high speed, her red scarf trailing behind her as she remarks to herself that it's good to own her new power. She slashes through a dark tentacle with a burst of energy, but the brother twin merely grunts in pain and prepares a counterattack. The brother glares at her, his arm reformed into a mass of black tendrils as he repeats her name with simmering rage. He sneers and mocks her, telling her that despite her flashy moves, she hasn't actually done much of anything to stop them. The Chimera twins lash out with multiple tentacles, but Cassia dodges with an acrobatic flip, mocking their family's track record as she prepares a palm strike. The sister twin stands over her crouching brother, patronizingly telling Cassia that her current efforts aren't going to be nearly enough to win. Cassia stands her ground, stating that it's fine, because she has more power to draw from within the heart of the dragon. She creates a glowing red shield to block a massive clawed swipe as she promises to introduce them to the full extent of her strength. The brother slams his fist against her shield, shouting that she doesn't know what she's up against and doesn't understand their master's true power. Cassia is launched high into the air above the city skyscrapers, gasping as she struggles to maintain her balance against the sheer force of the blow. She dives back down toward the sister, retorting that she probably knows their master better than they do while preparing a high-speed strike. Cassia is knocked back by a powerful blast, crashing into a building as the twins loom over her, telling her she's just a temporary obstacle on their path to living forever. Suddenly, Thomas arrives in his noble griffin armor, glowing with yellow electricity and declaring that everything eventually comes to an end. The siblings look disgusted to see him, calling him a traitor and laughing as they predict he will die just as easily as his father did. Thomas scoffs, retorting that he is nothing like his father while he and Cassia charge forward through a hail of energy beams. They stand back to back. Cassia asks why he came, and he jokes that his social calendar was clear, but they both agree it's time to punch some narcissistic monsters. Thomas leaps into the fray with a powerful kick, yelling at the brother to get down as the twin tries to swipe at him with a giant clawed hand. Cassia asks if Thomas can handle the brother while she takes on the sister, and they make a deal as Thomas delivers a crushing punch that sends a shockwave through the street. Simultaneously, Harriet appears on smartphone screens across the city, introducing herself as someone who isn't Inferno Girl Red, but is working to protect them. While Harriet speaks, Thomas and Cassia continue their brutal battle against the Chimera twins in the background. Harriet explains to the citizens watching from their balconies and streets that she knows they have a good reason to be scared, but she wants to offer them the truth. The Chimera twins grow increasingly frustrated as they find themselves unable to break through the hero's coordinated defense. Harriet's voice rings out over the city as people stop to listen, admitting that they shouldn't have asked the people to believe in just one hero. She tells the crowd that while Inferno Girl Red is a genuine hero who will never stop fighting, she isn't going to save the city alone. She needs them. Harriet explains that the city's enemies want them to believe humans are selfish and doomed, but Apex City stands as a beacon of hope because of the bravery of its people. She reveals the high stakes, explaining that the city's force field is actually powered by the collective belief of its citizens, and it has been faltering because they lost heart. Harriet urges the people to believe in themselves and each other as Cassia and Thomas hold hands, their combined energy forming a brilliant, burning light. Thomas and Cassia launch a final, synchronized assault, their combined powers creating a series of devastating impacts that overwhelm the Chimera twins. The siblings fall to the ground, battered and coughing up blood as their monstrous forms begin to crumble under the pressure of the hero's attack. The brother suggests that they need to fall back, but the sister stubbornly refuses to run, her face twisted in a mask of wounded pride. Thomas towers over them, telling the siblings that they have dodged responsibility and accountability their whole lives, but that ends today. In a desperate move, the sister triggers a dark void ability, encasing them in a massive orange sphere of energy as Cassia prepares for the final cue. Cassia unleashes a dragon blast, a massive torrent of flame that incinerates the energy sphere and leaves the Chimera twins trapped in a colossal explosion. The siblings crawl through the rubble, the sister admitting that their plan didn't go as expected and that she really doesn't want to resort to plan B. She pulls out a glowing device, telling her terrified brother that they have to try everything to please their master, coldly stating that it isn't personal as she activates it. The brother screams in agony as the device begins to tear his body apart, turning him into a volatile bomb of dark energy that horrifies Cassia and Thomas. In the control room, Dr. Caro and Lillian watch their monitors in terror, realizing the energy output is enough to take out a third of the city and doubting the net can handle it. Cassia grits her teeth and prepares to dive toward the center of the blast, shouting that she has to try regardless of the risk. A massive geometric force field hums to life around the explosion, struggling to contain the violent energies as it vibrates with intense power. Thomas tells Cassia they should get out of there now that it's active, but she knows that if the field doesn't hold, they will both die anyway. Cassia looks at her teammate and says she believes in the people of the city to hold the line, her hand glowing with fire. Thomas looks at her with newfound respect, telling her she is truly something special as he prepares to stand with her until the end. The griffin armor pulses with yellow energy as Thomas braces himself against the shockwave, prepared for the impact. Inferno Girl Red stands right beside him, her helmet glowing bright as she adds that they are in this together. A blinding white light consumes the entire frame, washing out the scene as the city's fate hangs in the balance during the final seconds of the explosion. The light fades, the silhouettes of Cassia and Thomas can be seen holding hands, a small spark of light still lingering between their palms. They stand at the bottom of a massive crater in the Chop district, victorious and alive amidst the smoke and ruins of the battlefield. Sometime later, a celebratory party is held under strings of lights, where Dr. Caro and Harriet share a drink while Cassia happily eats a cupcake. Cassia turns to the group with a more serious expression, thanking them for seeing her through her worst moments and making her feel fortunate to have them. She announces her plan to go find her mother the next day, and though she's scared, her friends smile and assure her that they will keep the city safe while she is away. Later, Harriet and Thomas stand with Cassia near the city limits, with Harriet reminding her to trust her instincts and listen to the crystal. Dr. Caro holds Cassia's hand, telling the young lady that she is incredibly proud of her, to which Cassia offers a grateful thanks. Cassia turns to Thomas and thanks him for sticking by her, and he rubs his head sheepishly, telling her to just make sure she doesn't die out there. The two share a long, silent hug, the bond between them solidified by the battles they fought together to save their home. Cassia pulls back and gives a two-finger salute, telling them she will see them soon with a confident smile. Cassia flies off, a new threat suddenly appears. A skeletal monster with blue flames roaring as it surprises Thomas and Dr. Caro. A massive shockwave of energy ripples through the air as the new enemy makes its move, signaling that the peace won't last long. Thomas glares with intense determination, sparking with yellow electricity, as he yells that they need to finish his transformer quickly because he's going after Cassia